Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the board workshop for the summer programming and first thing that I need to say is any member of public wishing to be heard should come forward to the podium at the appropriate time, which will be later, and introduce themselves to the board. Members of the public recognized by the chair will have 3 minutes to speak on a single subject matter or to address the current motion on the floor. The clerk of the trust will function as the official timekeeper. And I'm going to do roll call.
Member Andrew? Member Snow?
Here.
Member Chance? Here. Member Cornell?
Here.
Member Ferrero? Member Hart? Member Labarda?
Here.
Member Pinkerson?
Here.
Member Twombly?
She's here.
Which doesn't say she might be doing storm.
And because today, we do have somebody, who's online virtual, member Twombly, and she has special circumstances. She's involved with hurricane relief. So if somebody would be kind enough to make a motion allowing her to participate.
Second.
We have a motion second, any discussion? Any public discussion? There's public's good. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's unanimous. So Cheryl, we welcome you and look forward to your input and your vote. So,
Some of us just look forward to her getting off a storm.
she may. So the first item would be to adopt the agenda. There are no changes. Okay. We have a motion in your second.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Okay, turn it over to you. Thank you, Marcia.
Yes, sir. Thank you all.
Oh, Marcia, before we get started, I'm on the council board and we're meeting, have been meeting this morning and, we're moving the ballots. And so I may, after the workshop, go and take over for a while and then, come back. So I'll be here for a little while. Okay.
All right, we will turn it over.
Nice to see you in person.
Here.
Now I don't have to do the poll.
We will turn it over to Bonnie. Bonnie is going to lead our discussion.
We had a survey that we had shared with you guys during the last meeting, and I'm gonna go over what our feedback, so thank you all for completing, your input.
I'm talking to, because Cheryl may not be able to hear you.
Okay.
But she gets her mic.
Can you hear me? Right, so, we wanted to get your feedback. We have, our last year of the 3-year summer, contracts are closing, and we're looking to put out a new procurement, wanting your feedback and input on, learn what you'd like to see for summer 2025, what we can improve, what we can do differently. The survey had 4 primary areas. One was looking at the scholarship eligibility. One was getting your feedback on program costs. The 4th area is kind of program operations, hours, days, length of the program. And then the last part was summer learning. How do we want to promote summer learning within the summer camp programs? So I'm just going to go over quickly what the responses were. There are some things where there's pretty unanimous feedback. For example, for our scholarship types, everybody was pretty well in favor of keeping both full and partial scholarships. These are our scholarship criteria. So under 200% of the federal poverty line, SNAP benefits, foster care, formal kinship under case management, and children with a IEP and 504 plans were also under 400%. Everybody was in favor of retaining all of these categories that we currently have. that are listed on here. The only one where there was a little bit of, difference is that the IEP 504 says that, more specificity on, what they are rather than just across the board looking at specific, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, and I didn't realize that we could do like, I was taking that dash since you gave 200 and 400%. I was thinking it was one of those two and not one in between, and I see we did a 300%.
Yeah.
So had I known that, I would, because I thought the 400 was probably.
Actually, I created it, so.
Thank you.
I didn't scribble inside, I could drive a line.
But I thought since you gave the 200 and the 400, I just thought those were the two, like the two ones I didn't realize it was going there, because I did think the 400 was.
And some of the additional suggestions were listed on these slide that instead of it being under 200%, the feedback was that it's under 300%. And I added this chart in there so you can kind of see what that would look like for family income in between the two markers. So I don't know if anyone, if there's agreement on that or consensus on that, or if there's
I like the lower the 300. That's why I said that.
for a full scholarship.
Thank you, Lee, for being creative.
That's a brief moment, you won't see any more this year.
The record reflect.
Yeah.
So thank you, Lisa.
If I may, so is there agreement that we should move it to 300? Because staff is gonna take note and this is what you're gonna see.
I think so.
Okay.
I move the 3.
Is there any problem in documentation of that? I mean, if you're asking
There
for
documentation.
income, then I guess not, but I'm just wondering if there's other forms that people provide.
Yeah.
That are based on 200 or 400, is it creating more work for the applicant?
It's the same work for either, so it would be the same document. It could be a pay stub, it could be a tax return, it could be a letter from an employer.
I'm thinking more
we can just-
eligibility for other benefits.
So would it help if we made a motion?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I always want to hear from these people over here before I vote.
You mean providers?
Yes, because I think it's really important to know what you're facing before I vote. Put my money down.
Thank you, Kristen Harrington, Executive Director of Rolls Place. I'm grateful that you all are supportive of up to 400% of the federal poverty level. Because if you look at a family of 4, that means each parent is making about 45,000. And that's not rolling in by any means, with the cost increasing. So I'm supportive of your guys' path at this point.
So you like
No,
the
300 is for.
So a full scholarship, sorry. So yes, increasing that to, the federal poverty, the 300% of the FPL. Thank you. I think is incredibly helpful, because it acknowledges the work that United Way is doing with Alice. It acknowledges that FPL is not a great measure, in general, and so it gives more, it allows more coverage, for those families who are in poverty.
The 300 is good.
Yes.
Okay.
And Proctor scholarships.
Good.
Do you want a motion to?
Oh, we haven't.
Okay, we're not.
Sorry.
Totally good. Alice Marks, Executive Director of Kids Count. To echo what Christy just said, thank you for even bringing that up, asking providers and exploring if it creates additional hardship for the families or the providers, similar to what Christy said. A lot of our families on paper look like they're doing well enough, but the reality is the cost of living, this not being the best measure consistently of poverty. Very appreciative and grateful for that 300% because there are families that are in that space. Thank you.
Okay, we'll wait to make motions to carry in. So. Maybe you want to- Ken said he would keep track of everything, so yeah.
That's why we're asking about
I was taking
consensus.
notes, I was taking notes, they'll summarize consensus, and then we can move on things.
No, this is gonna be, it was your idea.
Yeah, it's a workshop, Lee. It's okay. We're good.
That's right. Good idea. Okay, continue on.
So for a full scholarship, it's 300% instead of 200%.
It is, yeah.
We're gonna revise that one criteria, we'll retain the other three as is. And then the only other suggestion that I wanted to bring attention to is from Member Twombly. She also suggested that Medicaid, which is, you know, when you think of SNAP benefits and Medicaid, it's typically the same criteria, so that could be something that could be shown as a documentation, you know, most are under 200% of the poverty level, so I wanted to get member feedback.
As opposed to a pay stub or.
Yeah, that they could show, similar to they show their SNAP eligibility letter, and they could show a Medicaid eligibility letter, and that would also be acceptable. Yeah, it's full scholarship eligibility, so we made 2 revisions. For partial scholarship eligibility criteria, we just had one criteria, and that's that the family income is between 200 and 400. Of course, that would, based on the last revision, would be between 300 and 400. That's the only one that we have for partial scholarship. There were a few folks that didn't check that box, so if and there were some other suggestions that are listed on the slide. A suggestion for referral from an agency with documentation of a hardship circumstance. I don't know, Member Chance, if you meant that for across the board or just partials, or?
I guess I do mean it across the board, but I administered an after-school program once, scholarship program once, and, you know, there were people who were doing okay, and then a medical incident happened with one of the children, and they were spending their life at Shands, and, you know, they wouldn't have qualified on paper beforehand. That's what I meant. You know, I would be open to it being for partial help, people who fell in hardship times or had a special circumstance in their family.
I just want to clarify, are you suggesting that we have some sort of language that says if you don't currently qualify at the time of sign up or registration, if there's a hardship, please communicate that to either the after-school program or the Children's Trust to potentially qualify? Is that what you're saying? You have some sort of language around making sure?
I'm thinking that through administratively. In a perfect world, yes, but I don't know how that plays out administratively, so I would expect staff.
I agree. I'm not sure how that works administratively, but we can think through making sure it's a resource. So therefore it is, families are aware that it could potentially happen. I think one issue we may run into is camps are full. And then therefore, even though you have a hardship, there still may not be a way for you to enroll depending on it.
Yeah, what I'm thinking of may be more appropriate for the after-school funding than summer for that reason, because I'm thinking about children who stop coming, that they might know the circumstances of a family.
But I think then it would make sense if there's a special case or a special need, since the providers are the ones that are close to the ground and close to the kids and families, that the provider could petition if they become aware of a particular circumstance. The provider could say to the trust, hey, we have this kid, they don't qualify on paper, but here's what we're aware of. Can we do a partial or even a full scholarship for this particular circumstance? I think the providers are the better place to vet that.
Or maybe it would allow a child to continue that already started and then something happened.
I think,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
that I think is
Well, either way, if the circumstance comes up midway, they still are the ones that are aware, and now the family needs subsidy that they didn't need before, but I think they're the ones that could petition.
But I think what Marcia's saying is if camp is full, is the
Right.
problem. So in my head, I was going back and forth between after school and summer, and I understand they're different, but I was thinking about providers who notice a child missing
right.
and inquire what's going on. And the instance I was thinking of, that kid was spending their afternoons with a sick sibling at Shands.
Okay.
Developmentally, that was a bad thing, but the family couldn't work.
Okay.
We could add referral from agency with documentation of hardship circumstances as approved by the staff.
We could have, yeah,
It's hard to kind of identify every potential
Of course.
situation, but we're gonna have them, and if we have that in there, then you will have to justify it, but you'd have to say, okay, can we justify it before, obviously, yes, in that case, the situation.
I
But I
think,
think,
it's-
yeah, it's the full part that's still a problem. I think.
yes, it is.
But that's
Whether
gonna be,
it's, whether
that's
it's
gonna be a
based on
problem
what
as far as
you.
getting the word out, because then somebody who was thinking about going into the camp, then they would have to recognize that, okay, well, I'm not quite there, we'll even start the process. Whereas the other case, where they're already in camp, that's an easier thing to deal with as far
I
as.
agree.
But, how do you get the word out necessarily that if you have an extenuating circumstance, you can still apply?
That's why I think the continuing is probably the better solution for this.
Or your eligibility criteria at the bottom at the end, you say, there may be extenuating circumstances, talk to the camp you'd like your child to apply to see if you qualify.
Yeah.
It may be that somebody's already in that bind, but doesn't know, so it encourages people to at least check with the camp they want to enroll in before they say, no, I'm not gonna be able to be accepted, even though I'm, spending half my life at Shands right now with a sick child. You're gonna have the same issue with Medicaid, medically needy. In and out form of Medicaid for people whose bills suddenly get astronomical, which is probably a complication nobody wants to know about.
I would imagine that staff is kind of at this point wondering, okay, what does the board expect as far as what establishes that criteria that makes it acceptable for the extenuating circumstances? So I would say, as far as that is concerned, is what y'all might want to do is come back to us with what y'all think would work. And then that way you have something there, and you're not gonna be able to put everything in there for every situation. But what we could do is utilize whatever you come up with for the after-school program to, if somebody, happens with the summer camp, that we could have some sort of guidelines at that point, in that situation.
We did have a agency referral for students in Palm Beach County for our summer camp scholarship program. It was only certain agencies that could make the referral, and it had to be like on letterhead. It was DJJ, it was certain providers that such as ChildNet and certain ones where they would make a referral and give a little bit, they would kind of be that would be, and they wouldn't have to, homeless populations like homeless shelters, there would be certain providers that we worked with, we knew were reliable to provide specific referrals for hardship circumstance, so we could do something like that. That's how they would have the referral process work in Palm Beach.
So again, that would be based on the provider.
Based on the selected providers that we would have to
So the only
develop
ones
a
that would-
relationship with,
The only
and
thing
it
that
might
would,
start off small.
yeah, the only thing that would leave out is, I'm a medical provider at UF Health, and I have this family that one of their kids is hospitalized, and kind of to Mary's point, the parent is spending and the other siblings are stuck because mom doesn't have childcare. That would be, so we might want to just, not just agencies we work with, but maybe there's some provision for a physician or other, somebody who knows about, again, letterhead, because you want somebody who's just not anybody to say, oh yeah, this is a hardship, but maybe just some scenarios of what
Right.
yeah, just maybe some scenarios of what kind of hardships you're thinking would qualify and we would want, and then that's the kind of thing that then agencies would be able to say, we have this family we're working with, this is their situation. Can we approve it?
So would it be appropriate to say, y'all come back to us with some
think so.
appropriate language?
I think also before we move from that, the suggestion on there from with the DJJ and foster care and things like that. It may be a child that ends up in so maybe we try to include that as well for.
Okay, Bonnie, we beat that one to death. What's next?
Okay. So that just shows what we had in the previous year. Should we have a set weekly scholarship rate across the providers? Across the board, there was either no or not sure. several board members were not in favor of having a set scholarship rate, others were unsure. And there was a lot of feedback on that, so, and then on the flip side, should the rate vary across providers based on the population in the program or service delivery? So nearly all board members were in favor of a scholarship rate variance. So there's another way to look or think about that is there a max rate, a rate that is too high that we think is unacceptable for taxpayer dollars for a weekly rate of scholarship? So,
How
I'm
would
sure
you
you
come up
guys,
with it though? I don't know, but I think we would have to come up with. I mean, I like the idea better than yes or no.
Yeah.
What I put in there was, we have a median or, you know, an average. And if you exceed that, come back and tell staff why. You know, and then, you know, based on that, we can say yes or no.
For me, this gets back to the conversation we had a couple more meetings ago, when we look at the cost per child, and if the cost, in my mind, the differentiator is what are we getting for that extra cost per child? If you have a phenomenal kind of program that produces phenomenal outcomes, but is very expensive, and those outcomes are in the areas we've outlined as priorities, then perhaps we want to go there. If, on the other hand, it's just an expensive program because of what they do, but doesn't have any better outcome than programs that are less costly per child, I'm more inclined to say maybe we cap it and say, we'll subsidize a portion of your additional costs, that, because it just doesn't seem to me to just say, well, this is the rate, or even this is the max. Somehow in my mind, I want to be able to link what it is that you do that's so unique and so contributory to what we're trying to achieve, versus just, this is your cost per child, because.
That's why I said, you just said it more eloquently.
I agree with what Tina said.
Well, who?
With what Tina said.
Last week?
Oh, right here.
Oh.
What did you say?
Yeah, let's go, let's see.
Oh, long.
That's just what Maggie just said.
Right, I think it's the same thing now.
Yeah, and the good news is, none of us said yes. We're all struggling or
Right.
open on
I
this.
think it's the good news for us and the bad news for them, but.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So we can bring back to the workshop for the RFP, a few different options as it relates to not only our outcomes, but we're working closely with Florida After School Network, one of our other sister CSEs who have specific cost per child amount, to where we can come back to the board and say our recommendation is that, similar to what we did with enrichment, we're not going to exceed, you know, this cost per child or cost per session. So since where we have fallen, I'd like to bring back to the board a few different options as it relates to costs. We can do that in a few different ways as it relates to the type of camp it is. If the board is going to say, yes, we're still going to fund camps that provide exposures and that sort of thing, and then therefore their costs will fall here. If it's going to be an academic where we're expecting to see gains in literacy, that sort of thing, that cost can be here based on the type of program and the items that need to be purchased. Since we're kind of have a few different opinions, we can bring back a few different options for you all to consider. Someone said, how do we do that? How do we know? Well, we utilize our resources through the Florida After School Network.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we can bring you all back what our other CSCs are doing, as well as the recommendations we're getting from the Florida After School Network with costs for summer camps and that sort of thing. We also will have to do the same work for after school when we release the next after school RFP. So we might as well just go ahead and establish what that cost could be. Very similar to what our Early Learning Coalition does. You contract with them, this is how much you're going to get. The rates are lower, of course, and our rates would be higher than that, but they're similar to what funders are already doing. This is what we're willing to fund for this area.
So bring back-
you bring us back
So
something.
bring back some options.
But please bring back some options and the basis on how the Florida After School Network, how they accumulated, because now that I've read this, it comes back to me. Right? Because ELC, they pay them people poverty wages. I'm just gonna, all right? They don't get paid well to provide service to, as we got our 0 to 5 advocates here, provide the
The most
care.
important
For
service.
years, all right, and then so we, I wanna say, quote unquote, we failed in that area in the sense that we haven't done as well as we could have. And then we come here, so I'm gonna speak from the perspective of, you all know that I'm the treasurer for AIM, right? And I have in the past, which I hate fundraising, so I'm gonna put that out there, hustle to get money for them to have a full-time, their own, mental health council. One time we were sharing one, AIM, Kids Count, and Girls Place. And the need was so much, right?
It is.
There was so much,
Still
so
is.
we had
We don't
to take on the extra cost because of so that's an additional cost and so when the kids, I just left the school board workshop and they're talking about behavior issues with the kids in school and the mental health stuff and the counseling and the family, yada, 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 yada. So, we're saying we wanna make impacts and we were talking about a few weeks ago giving, clergy people stipends, which that's in my goal. I ain't gonna go down that rabbit hole. But I just think we kinda gotta think of how we're spending the money to really try to address the issue. So I'm saying it's gonna be hard, that's why I was saying here, we have to see the counter program that folks provide. And if they're providing mental health counseling, if they're providing trauma-informed care, they're trying to provide some semblance of benefits for their staff so they can keep a team together, so there's not all this change in routine in the lives of children who already a good number of them come from chaotic, have a lot of trauma already. They've got a lot of change. We kind of gotta, I ain't saying it's $10,000 a kid a week. That's not really what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's some exorbitant amount, but good care, quality care, and what we would put our kids in, those of us that can pay costs. And so I think we kind of gotta balance out if we're gonna be real cheap and say, this is like ELC does, say this is what we're gonna pay, and that's gonna be a flat rate. That may not be enough to cover the cost of providing good care or good services to kids.
I do agree, I agree with you 100%, and I'm definitely not recommending that we follow ELC. That was just an example that it is a thing, where funders, specify how much they are going to, cover the cost of, which is the route that we have already started taking. But historically, we have always, the trust has always paid more than any other, funder, anyway. So I don't recommend that we do that, but I do think that is the route that we've already decided that we're taking, that we will have to limit. If not, then we'll continue to have these conversations about why somebody's program is so much more expensive than the other and that sort of thing. I think we can come up with reasonable costs.
No, I agree with you, but I just don't think we just pull a number out the air and we have to say, if you're offering this, and this, there's some kind of allowance in the things that is gonna cost. So that's the reason why kids that get into the dentist that have Medicaid can't get there because it's so low, the reimbursement rate, and nobody wants to take those types of patients, right? And so we kind of, we went to the voters with this and we don't wanna get cheap now and say we don't wanna provide, funding to do this and then we may provide a bigger bucket of money over here for something else when our community has got to kind of catch up in a sense. And I think if we put good money behind good programs, we'll get good outcomes. And all of them might not even be academic. Because there's some folks that are doing some things that may not be directly Freedom School comes to mind because they are solely academic and they're doing a jam up job over there, right? If I had a little kid, I'd be signed up to put them there. But there's some, like the Cultural Arts Coalition, it's not that much academic folks. That science club is doing a real good work. They're keeping kids off, I don't know, but it's a lower cost to do something. But you take a program like AIM, gotta pay a mental health counselor, and there are a lot of people, there's a long line for mental health counseling, right, Maggie, because Medicaid doesn't reimburse.
Actually, Medicaid is not the worst.
Okay, they may not.
Private insurance pays.
That's the one that I know, and then even with providers, you may have a six month waiting list each time to get into.
The challenge with mental health right now, I think, is recruiting mental health people. There's just not enough of them to go around. So I, like Tina,
Okay, go ahead.
read my answer a minute ago. And I think where Tina's headed is where we need to go. I think this is as much an issue around how we set up and what we find acceptable costs at the front end when we're negotiating the contracts. And I would say we can think about that in terms of components. Do you have an academic component? Do you have a mental health component? Do you have a safety component? And you start to build acceptable cost by how many of those tiers are covered within what the offering is. And I would have no problem saying, if you're offering mental health counseling and physical health stuff and, academic enhancement, that should be a much higher rate than a program that's not doing all of those things. So I do think that what we need to do in this RFP is start to think about what we think is what a cost kind of structure and basis could be, and that sets a range of what an allowable cost per child would be. And then we don't probably have the kind of variance that we're worried about here at the back end. How much do we subsidize as the rate? We know what we're gonna subsidize as a rate because we figured out what these components add value-wise and cost-wise.
Can't say better than both of them. All I would add is, do we limit the amount of scholarship money for participants, like 20% or 10% or 5%? Do we set a limit on how many scholarships are offered in?
Per provider.
That would be another way.
So some of them might be located in areas where it's a fully low-income area, where they don't have the funds to pay for it.
My reaction to that is sort of, ugh.
Okay, that's one other question.
So it sounds like we're kind of all saying the same thing as far as you have to justify, we're coming up with some sort of something. And if it's above that, then you tell us why you deserve more. And also, does the amount, are we still, as a baseline for all these, are they still telling us, giving us idea of what percentage the trust is of their overall budget? Is that still part of all the RFPs?
That will be.
Okay, and are you doing any fundraising, that sort of thing?
Yes.
That part of it?
Part of it.
I'm not writing the motion, but I wrote, bring back some scholarship cost options based on an outcome-driven database recommendation kind of matrix, which considers mental health, safety, and academic.
As someone appropriately pointed out to me, we don't do motions on this.
I know, I'm just saying for staff, if they're listening.
Say it again, can't repeat.
Bring back some scholarship cost options based on outcome-driven recommendations, database outcome-driven recommendations, which would consider mental health, safety, and academic outcomes.
Yeah, I would say not just scholarship, but contracting. Because that's the basis of it, right? It's
Right.
we're gonna determine how much of their cost we do in scholarship, but we're gonna assess the appropriateness of their cost based on those kinds of.
Right, which captures what Tina said, that if this program is offering all three of these things, it's obviously a higher cost for the provider and a higher scholarship allocation.
Dr.
So I don't want to interrupt Bonnie's flow, but I'm sort of interested in getting, I know we already.
I'll say, we've already screwed it
There's
up.
only 4
Sorry. I'm really interested in something in the contracting process related to accepting children with disabilities. Because I think we as a trust have not done very much to address the needs of children with disabilities. And if I were a provider, I would say, are you kidding me? You want me to accept, well, that means I'm gonna need an extra person. I'm gonna,
There's another one.
it's gonna be more expensive for me to do it. So how do we address that? I really wanna make sure that we cover the needs of the
I think
disabled.
that would be one of those categories.
Yeah.
Mental health, physical safety, disability, if you're gonna have that component, then you're gonna get extra money because you need stuff to handle it.
Or extra points to make sure you get any money. You know what I mean?
Definitely do that.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, it can go both ways, but if pulling the grades, unless you get.
Nobody-
So it still has
Doesn't come with that.
Yes, you're right.
Kristen?
Just even in terms of staffing, and that may be, if you're gonna provide services to kids with disabilities, you're gonna need extra staffing, because those kids need either extra monitoring or extra assistance.
Kristen?
In addition to that, would the board be interested in allotting a certain percentage of the dollars for camps that work directly with children with disabilities? I've attended the Disability Expo here in town, and there are camps that is who they work with. And I just wondered if the board would be interested in that in addition to.
Why don't we look at and see what we get instead of saying a percentage, and then why don't they get extra points?
And maybe make an outreach to them so that they know that they're welcome to apply.
Right.
I mean, former member Schneider really out there at this point, and asked us to all read a book, and so I agree with Art, this should be a component.
It should be a priority.
Yeah,
It should be.
should be.
Okay,
Chair.
yes.
Allison, I think Allison may have wanted to make did you change your mind?
You can. What we'll do is, as we go over each one of these sections, I think there are 4 we've done, this is the second, we'll just let y'all comment after the end of the section.
Wonderful. Allison Marks, Kids Count Executive Director. I appreciate that because I'm kind of going back and forth and trying to take notes and figure out what is the appropriate time to speak. I originally moved rather quickly, as I'm sure all of you noticed, because all of the children that attend Kids Counts summer camp are scholarship funded by the trust. So all 35 of our students receive scholarship through the generosity of our community and the folks in this room. So when that was said, I was like, oh no, what do I do? How quickly can I make the difference to make sure that all of my students, all 35, I wish I could have all 70, are able to attend camp because they are far below 200%. Many of them, when I do the math, are hovering under 150% of the federal poverty level. So I just wanted to make that part. I'm too tall for this microphone.
You can move it.
Up or down.
I'll
Don't worry,
break
if you
it.
break it, it's okay.
Okay, because I can't buy it. So that being,
have to lean into just stand up and talk.
okay, I'm naturally very loud working with children. But that being said, I just wanted to make it known that that was something that would severely impact a program like Kids Count that works in East Gainesville with students living in very deep poverty.
So Allison, did you hear the quote that was?
Yeah.
I believe it was. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Half the room was like, I made the same thing.
That was my feedback on that.
But just for the sake of record and, making as a provider that clear how that would be devastating for our kiddos. Similarly, I thought, just to put it out there, as we discussed mental health and trauma, a lot of our children have undiagnosed disabilities due to the nature of their economic status. Many of our students are unable to get diagnosed for things like ADHD or complex childhood traumatic disorder, which I was here for the community gun violence very long meeting. Again, almost all of my students, by the time they get to me in the 3rd grade, have witnessed gun violence. So keeping that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Bonnie?
no.
Sorry. Richie, sorry.
Thank you. What I would like you all to consider too is, when you look at the list of what the cost per child, what we reimburse for, Girls Place is at the low end of that. And Kristen and I talked quite a bit. We are not refunded at the cost per child. So our actual cost per child is about $200. We're refunded at about what the parents would pay, like a parent coming into the program would pay. The very first summer, we were reimbursed the cost per child. So we are inherently forced to diversify our funding, which we pride ourselves on, and the Children's Trust goes away, that we're not gonna fall into disarray. But the benefit of not charging fees is that you get reimbursed your true cost per child. So I'd like to advocate for that. I think an opportunity as well is that We don't necessarily need a behaviorist or behavioral technicians all year round, but during the summer we would. And so perhaps funding salaries specific to just summer camp. And so maybe it is that there is someone who's available to do more mental health counseling just for the summertime. And so it would be a separate, it wouldn't be rolled into the scholarship cost. It would be additional salaries just related to summer. And I mentioned the behavior because we are bringing 160 girls into a very active environment with anywhere from 15 to 30 girls in a classroom. And we don't necessarily know the needs of the girls when they walk in the door. We find them out relatively quickly. And that's where our administrative team gets exhausted because we literally put everything to the side to be there for our kids. And so we become the support system for our counselors, and we become the ones who step in the classroom so the counselors can step away. We're also the ones working 12 to 13-hour days while we make sure that our rest of our teams are working more than 8. So maybe, as I said, cost per child, our actual cost per child, and we can show that with our budgets. We can show you how much we put in summer camp and how much we pay out, and that we can actually show you the cost. So considering that, and then considering if there's just summer only salaries, that would be helpful. The other part, and I actually mentioned to Christy, I think a couple years ago, about setting this baseline number. The reason for that, again, is encouraging us as providers to diversify our funding, that we're not solely dependent on the trust to fund our summer camps or after school programs. And again, I'll keep pushing that 12 years later, we have the trust again. But what it'll do is it'll set us up for if something happens to the trust, that we have a fallback in that way. So I like that the thought is go figure out best practices. But also keeping in mind that yes, we're not gonna be the circus center with their insurance rates, for sure.
Sure.
Before we lose Christy, can I ask her a question? I'm really interested in this meta programming concept. Would that work in the summer to have a mental health counselor that could go from program to program and give coverage to the camps, or?
The needs are too high.
So you need one
No, they're
person
too bad.
in each
It's
sub.
high and unpredictable. I
Yeah.
mean, when you
Well,
have a
I'm
kid in
just-
crisis, you have a kid in crisis, not when you're gonna help.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out for not necessarily a bare bones program, but a program that has a more homogeneous population of kids that never really thought about having a mental health counselor. If we had a meta programming available for them, would that be of any help to them? Would that allow more kids to attend?
I think the relationship building is critical for that to be successful, and so someone just dropping in, unfortunately, it's not gonna be as successful. Like if you come in, you're like, I know everything about everything, and I know you do, and our kids aren't gonna trust you right away.
So Christy, you've raised 2 questions for me.
Yeah.
One is, do you and most of the other providers have a sliding scale for fees? Because you're saying we're paying you the difference between the parent fee and your cost. So do you have a sliding scale kind of fee structure? Do other providers have that? Because that would be a consideration. And the other is more of a piece of advice that I give to anybody I consult with is just turn in a fully loaded budget.
We do.
You know, fully load that budget so that we know what the actual costs are. Including that, put in a cost per child budget and then show us how much of that you will earn. But I think the idea that all we're gonna do is meet nonprofits' costs. As somebody who ran one, you gotta have extra money at the end of the day. So to just cover your cost to the penny is not gonna get us a vibrant, sustainable, community of children's providers. So I think we need to see the budget with full cost, including leaving something at the end. And then kind of say, all right, how much of that do we expect parents to chip in? Do we expect parents to chip in? And because even if you do, you know you're gonna have a receivable at the end that doesn't get paid.
Right, of course. Yeah, so since we've had trust funding, we have not done a sliding scale, because essentially that creates one for us in that, we have the partial scholarships from you all, and then we have the full scholarship from you, and so then a full pay family, has their separate rate. We have a sibling pays.
So you basically have a rate for the full, the 400 and the now 300.
Yeah, and I'm sure Christy's more knowledgeable in terms of how other fund their.
But it just raised that, you just raised that in my mind, that that's an issue that we haven't ever really thought through much, I don't think.
Martin, did you want to say something?
Well, Christie is probably better at articulating. I'll tell you what my thoughts are. My thoughts are, be careful what you ask for. Because once we say, give us your total cost, all programs aren't created equal, and all of our administrators are not necessarily like the ones that are in the room currently. So.
Well, we have to vet that. I mean, we have to vet whether that's an acceptable. I'm not saying you give it to us and we say, oh, good, sign up on it. I'm just saying, I know sometimes that people propose to what they think they're gonna get without really sharing what their true cost is. And I think we need to understand, yeah, we may say no, that, you do this with negotiation, right? You say, we don't think that item is really gonna cost that much, but I can tell you, you're not gonna get a mental health counselor for less than $60,000 a year.
I wonder if the middle ground, Marcia, is about the cost of field trips. Like, I wonder if that's something for you all to consider is, we're not gonna pay more than $30 for a field trip. And then it's up for us as providers. Sorry, I know Allison had a really great trip to Wild Adventures this summer, but I think that may be the gigantic difference where Girls Place, we're like, we're gonna do one big trip for every single group, and there's 8 groups. Where I think other providers are like, we're gonna do a big trip every single week. I'd be insane if we did that, and it scares the mess out of me, to take children to a busy atmosphere anyway. And so perhaps that could be a middle ground, is not putting staffing in the same, lane as field trips. That maybe we're more conservative on field
Well,
trips.
that's where you have a line item budget that shows all that really clearly, and then you can make that, again, I'm not saying share your full cost and we're gonna assume it's correct. We will challenge some of those, but I don't just ask for what you think. We need to know what the true real cost per child is, and then we can quibble about, well, that's too much for that category or too little for that one, but.
Kind of mindset, tell us what you need.
Right.
You know, and then we may be not agreeing on the definition of need. You know, I think that you may put yourself in a situation where you get a pie in the sky approach as opposed to, you know, okay, they're really gonna hone in on whether or not and give you something.
That still needs to be responsive. I mean, it can't just be, oh, I wanna grow, no, it's gotta be responsive to what we're asking. But we should be getting a real picture, not a what do you think you're likely to get, as opposed to what it's really gonna cost me, is the point I'm making.
Okay, Joe, get enough feedback on that one, and we'll move on to hours of operation.
Do you mind if I give you feedback on the children with disabilities? Perhaps something that could work, and it would require more feedback, is we're very open to having children with autism, Down syndrome. We're adaptable and capable. We don't have people specifically expertise. If we have a non-verbal child with autism, I'm not sure how we would handle that. But perhaps in the system you're describing, perhaps there are people that can be with the center to support us in those ways, to be able to integrate children with disabilities rather than just having standalone ones. Because that would be an area of weakness for us, is that we're not trained to be able to.
And it's better for the kids
Mhm.
to be in a camp with other kids.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. You were up here earlier, what was that all about?
On to program operations, so the next 3 slides, it's really born out of parent feedback for, you know, one of the most common feedback we received on the parent survey was that parents wanted longer program length, they wanted, more hours a day, even the kids wanted to stay longer and wanted a lengthier, program experience, so. For this one, the majority of board members supported us having a requirement of a minimum of 8 hours a day. A lot of the feedback was that parents work and having a half-day camp won't accommodate those families. There were 2 board members that said maybe half-day camps or less than 8 hours, but the majority was for 8 hours or more. And certainly I would think that if somebody didn't need the full 8 hours, they could take their child home early.
Then the provider gets dinged for the provider gets dinged for attendance.
No, it'll say that they're there or not, we don't count it.
Oh, okay.
Well, historically, we haven't counted
Okay.
hours of attendance, I'm sure providers don't want to go down that, route either, but, typically we just, are they there the day or not there the day? The next one was the days per week, with the exception of holidays, to have a 5-day a week, and again, the same type of feedback, parents need to work 5 days a week. Member Cornell's advocated for a minimum of 3 days. But again, this allows for consistent attendance and parents who need to work 5 days a week to have similar safety with their children. And then the last one was the weeks of operation. So this one had the most variability of board member opinion. Most board members agreed that camps should operate at least 4 weeks. And then thinking of impact takes time, and then just having a really consistent programming where families can find camps for the whole summer. There's a couple of the feedback, unique camps need flexibility. If there's a camp that has a real specialty area or that outdoor sleepaway camp, I think was one of the example of that, the horse camp. So that one had a little bit more variability.
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't know if I read this correctly. I thought this maybe meant 4 weeks of camp, but it could be a different.
Yeah, it could be the program operates for more than 4 weeks, so a parent can choose to participate the last week, or it can mean both, so it's your feedback on.
Yeah, I wasn't anticipating there'd be 4 weeks of the same program. That means like 4 weeks of baseball. That's. what I
They're really
thought.
good.
I thought they were excellent. I thought it was meant to.
So we were all thinking of different kinds of camps.
Correct. I wouldn't expect a camp to have 4 weeks of the same like activity necessarily, but certainly 4 weeks they're in operation. That's how I took it. I think maybe, I don't know if we all think that way.
And that's what it is, the program's operation, not necessarily the parent's attendance, but that could be for the child's attendance within the camp.
And after I submitted this, I had buyer's remorse because I think AIM only operates three weeks out for the summer, I think, it's shortened, or 2, yeah. So, but that's their focus, and because of trying to, the tours and all of that stuff that they do. So I wanted to go back and change mine, so I'm in the no rule for that. Because if they set out and say that this is what they're gonna do, and that's what I think we should let them operate in the space where they are, and also like the older kids, the middle and high schoolers, if they have a focus of they're gonna just do a certain thing and it's only gonna take a certain number of weeks. I want to change, can I change my answer? That's what I'm saying.
The no's one call.
Okay.
So first of all, I don't feel really strongly about this one, and I can go with the board if the board wants to set a standard here. I would say that when we first initiated the trust, and there were 5 of us, we wanted to have as many options as possible. But as we start to mature as an organization, I think when I looked at what other trusts have done that have been around for a decade or 2 decades, is we actually start to focus in on who's doing it the best, and then providing them more resources like a mental health counselor and safety trainer at the facility. And so I think we're kind of almost there and not quite. The reason I said no on these 3 is I also recognize what member Chance said, which is a 1 week or a 3-day thing in a child's life can literally change their direction. And I don't want us to not at least have an option for that because of an arbitrary, you have to be 8 hours for 5 days a week for 8 weeks. And so we miss that thing that turns that kid into an astronaut. And that was really the sole basis of the no's, and also the kind of, I figured it would prompt us. I actually anticipated being the only no so that y'all could all pile up on me. But that was the reason, is when we initiated this trust, one of our missions was to let every kid do everything that they can be, give them that opportunity. And I don't want us to set an arbitrary limit to that. And I think summer camp is windy.
Right.
The camp opportunity, full scholarship, a kid that's never gone to Tuscaloosa, that's the night, out at Wild Wonder, has never left Haynesville and had an overnight trip, and they see, oh wait, there's the whole world up here, changes their life, can literally change their life, and so I want us to keep talking.
So I think this is one where I would change my position, having heard from everybody and go to a no. But I'm also, and I guess where I was thinking about is how hard it is for parents who have to piece together summer. So this might be an area where we do wanna say, you can have a specialty kind of camp. And then you can have this is a place where you know your child is gonna be safe, get some academics, get some stability during the summer. And so I don't know how we divvy that up, funding wise but I think that there ought to be a range, because suddenly we don't wanna have all specialty camps. I mean, we've got parents who do not have the bandwidth to spend that much time fishing for, we just want a place that we know we can trust.
Yep. That's the majority, right?
And that's,
But it's almost like when we have the academic and non-academic, it's a different sorting hat. This, the specialty or short-term versus the long-term taking place to enrich my child's life. And I was thinking specifically of not just 1 week STEM camp, and there is a growing body of research that that exposure is the most successful thing in leading a kid to persevere and enter a career path. But I was also thinking of Camp Crystal, and all of our 5th graders go to Camp Crystal and learn that it's an actual summer camp. They had no idea. But I mean, we give them support to go there during the school year. And, you know, it's an expensive camp. I mean, I had to think hard about it, sending 3 kids.
I
So,
mean, Lee was there, we bought Tuscaloosa to provide a place like Camp Crystal, the kids that can't get in. It was largely, I mean, you remember that, Lee?
It changed after I left. We just, at the time we were talking about it, it was just whether or not to buy it.
but that's where I was thinking
But
about the
that
1
was,
week and the
that
expensive.
was really one of the major reasons.
yeah. Again, it comes back to what are you offering and how does it fit with our goals? And if it fits with our goals, I think duration is less the issue, so I'm
And
changing
you
my.
can't measure them all the same way.
No, no, you
Just
can't.
pointing out the number, it's not really that big an issue because 3 out of 20 programs were under 4 weeks.
Right.
Okay, that's good.
So,
You know, like the Santa Fe College for Kids, that's like a couple weeks, I think 3 weeks, right?
But the camp itself.
But they go all, they have
summer.
different sessions, so they have
Yeah,
different
so that,
sessions.
I would think that would count as about 4 weeks.
Right. No, it does.
3 weeks.
The whole thing.
Yeah, they
Had 2 that were.
offer it for 3 weeks in July.
Oh, they don't do 2 sessions anymore? They used to be, when my kids, when it was 2 3-week sessions. And you either enrolled in one, the first early one or the late one. And so that's what made me change my answer after I submitted it back. Because there's some programs that are just for a short period of time. And my kids didn't do a STEAM camp, but they did CFK.
Chair Pinkerton.
Yes.
So I think great discussion, but we need a little consensus.
Yeah.
No, because we still have to bring something back. We still need to bring something back to you. So I'm gonna go back to daily hours of operation. Do you have,
These 8 hours.
so you're all right with 8 hours?
Yeah, okay.
All right. Days per week of operation.
I can't give you an answer on that one. I'm not sure where we are.
I was thinking, when I answered these, I was thinking in my elementary age kids' mind, right? I need you to be open 5 days a week, because I can't leave these kids home by themselves. But then I started thinking you got older middle and high school kids, but that's how I answered it. I was thinking 5 days a week, because I remember how much of a challenge.
For the parents.
For
All
the
right,
parents.
hey, what, let's do, everybody who's for 5 days a week, please raise your hand.
Well, it's right on there.
I know, it's on there,
I
but
could
we've
go
had,
there, but I'm like,
okay, so it looks like, it looks like
Yeah.
majority.
I'm not hung up on it.
yeah, I'm not hungry on it either. I guess my big thing is,
I'm
can we
more
just
hung
let
up on
them
the
propose? Can we let what are you trying to, what do we want to accomplish, what are you trying to accomplish? And we pick programs that
We have
match.
to put something into the RFP that tells them what we're looking for, what we consider to be the priority.
A 3-day camp won't qualify, basically. So,
Well,
Okay,
more
so-
points per 5.
Okay, so how many people believe there should be at least 4 weeks?
I think we've given up on that one.
Remember the
Sounds
STEM
like-
camp you just said, you
Yeah.
have a.
Sounds that,
Well, okay, in
I
that
heard
case,
that could be anything.
okay, well, in that case, maybe it goes into the category of y'all come back with recommendation on why we should be under 4 weeks.
Camp offers. Well, if they operate for 4 weeks, but they're 4 1-week sessions.
Call for kids too.
Yeah, you wanna just say, we have some specialty camps and some just kinda.
And some academic.
And some academic, so that I think is what you guys can come back to us. I mean, I'm looking at what parents said. They
Actually, we're gonna
wanted
get into the academic thing.
more.
next.
That's a whole other monster.
But I mean, you know, what they like or what they don't, so you can think about what the parent is, how to allocate. You know, we'll fund X number of these, X number of those, or some structure, but I think there has to be a variety. And I think that if we're really focused on those folks that we are most going to be able to help. I would go for longer just simply because I know that these parents don't have bandwidth to figure out 5 different camps for summer.
So the current decisions, it's clear to us what the requirements are based on the hours of operation and the days per week of operation. We can, because currently, the last 3 years, they have been able to just propose. We came back and asked these specific questions based on conversations and discussions at the board meeting. So with those two, that's very clear to us, and then we can ask providers to propose based on weeks of operation. Because of the decision that you always made, you don't want to limit it based on weeks of operation, and that's fine, we can do that. We know we're going, based on that decision, we're going to get proposals from organizations that have a 1-week camp, a 3-week camp, a 10-week camp, and that's fine. But they absolutely will need to be open 5 days a week, minimum of 8 hours per day, based on the decision that you all made.
Allison?
I don't know enough about the other summer camp providers, but speaking for Kids Count, we do serve students exclusively from Rawlings Elementary School. And so in some ways, Kids Count is an organization that is limited. 4 weeks is the maximum, at our current structure, because our students are returning back to the school year mid-July. And so we wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't be able to keep my staff, because a lot of my summer camp staff are my school year staff. And they are a little toasty by the end of June, as am I. So again, I don't know what the other, isn't that the best way to put it? You get a little crispy. Yeah, but I don't know about the other providers that have contracted with the trust for summer camp, but you know, in speaking for my agency, we are limited. I would love to do all 8 weeks. However, 4 weeks is where we're at based on the population we serve.
Based on the decision they just made, you are fine.
Well, I'm just thinking for other folks, if there are.
But I think there are enough camps in the city of Gainesville that we don't fund, right? So we also have to think about that. There are camps that, you know, where they are open all summer. And we can't just think about the people that currently receive funding from the trust. This is going to be open, and there may be other folks that we will be funding, who will be happy to provide 8 weeks of summer, you know, camp. So I think we have to, you know, think about it in terms of this is going to be open to the full community. People who haven't been able to be a part of the trust are now going to be given that opportunity. And if we're saying to them, this is what we want, then I think we hear from them all the time. When are we going to be given an opportunity to, you know, be a provider? So that's where I'm going with this. What is it that we want? What is it that we find are the priorities? And then we open it up and we see what we get. Now, if we don't get, you know, what we're asking for, then we come back and we say, all right, we were asking for pie in the sky and that's not reasonable. But from the people that I'm talking to, that we're meeting with, who are coming to see us, if not weekly, every other week, every couple of weeks, I think that nothing that we are discussing is too much. I think we're gonna have providers.
Dr. Hart?
I just want to reiterate that we are a learning organization. So every time we put out an RFP, we're doing a new experiment and we evaluate the results. Thank you, Tony. And we figure out if we need to reevaluate. But just from my own experience raising kids in this town, there used to be something that came out with the Gainesville Sun every summer that said what all the summer activities were. We don't have that newspaper anymore, but could the trust assume the function in our brand new facility, which is soon to be elegantly improved? Could we invite people there to say, okay, everybody put up a table that's got a summer program and we hand out a piece of paper that says if you need a scholarship, these are the ones who get them. But if you don't need a scholarship, the other providers could be there too. And somebody like me and my husband could go there and pick and choose a summer worth of activities for our kids.
I think that's a parking lot.
Yeah, I would say, I don't think our,
just don't do the book like they used to.
I don't think our, yeah, we're gonna do the book. I don't think, although our new training / conference room is going to be lovely, I don't think it's gonna be large enough for what you're asking.
No.
But you're right,
Parking lot.
member Cornell, member Pinkerton, we could certainly do something like that. And I also wanna make sure that you all are aware that we are working on a resource guide / magazine that will do exactly what Dr. Hart is asking for. So it's in the works.
Okay, Bonnie?
Thanks for coming on the plan. Academic focus, okay.
A big one.
Academic focus,
I
yeah.
don't think it's that big. I thought we kind of decided.
I was more decisive tonight than I thought it would be. I thought there was more of a split.
Yeah, I came in here loading for bear.
Yeah.
Position with research.
So summer learning loss, I put it out there looking at some of the research out there for if we did want to produce academic outcomes, see gains and over the summer. We know that children on average will lose more in math, about 2.6 months of math, 2 months of reading. I put up the data on there. I'm sure you've seen it. So we know summer learning loss is a real thing and that affects our community. But we also were not in agreement, nearly all members were not in favor of having the 70+ hours incorporated into funded camps, and one was unsure. So, and the feedback was that it was gonna be maybe not appropriate for some camps, appropriate for others, wanted to allow different types of camps that might not be purely academic. I think there was some of the comments that burn out of staff, kids and parents, but I did want to say that learning doesn't have to be, it can be fun, you know, and some of the programs do a really good job of making it fun. They'll have science experiments and singing, and they'll tie it into a craft or a field trip or an experience. But as far as the feedback on this, what the research says is you really need to have an organized, rigorous program. You need to have a certain number of hours, and there, you know, you need to really kind of go all in to produce the outcomes. So we when it came to what strategies the board would like to see, we talked about curriculum was one of the strategies. The board members were more in favor of allowing providers to propose how they're gonna incorporate academic learning versus one board member requiring a summer learning that's shown promising results and having it be applied across, say if the provider wanted to ensure academic rigor was in their program, say if there was a certain strategy that all of them use, like for example, UFly or a specific curriculum, that would be the one that's applied across the board. So board members leaned more in that direction. And staffing, there was options for how staffing could, be added into the summer camps to support summer learning, that we could, have qualified credentialed staff go into, providers to provide academic lessons, instructions. And basically, this was a check all that applied, and a lot of y'all checked all of them. So, and then there were some others. So there's the option to hire, teachers, the option to train staff, the option to bring in staff that would come kind of like somebody would come in and maybe go from camp to camp, maybe giving a certain number of lessons per week.
Mr. Chair, can I
Yes.
say something? So I am all in for learning, that's why I'm a school board member, right? I am leery about requiring, a summer program that does not have academic focus, like, say, Freedom School. That is what they are, you know, and they do theirs in a fun way. I would enroll in there, but I am really leery about, imposing this on other summer programs, because we're gonna then look at data, and I think the 10 of us and a staff would be holding summer programs to a higher standard, and then we're holding the local school districts. So I don't, and that's who's really, that's their charge, and with some kids, we're not doing a real good job of that.
Well, Tina, I thought we decided at the last meeting, or talked about anyway, that putting out a statement in the RFP that academics are important to, and, we know that there is a summer loss, and just put in a statement saying, it's important to us, what are y'all gonna do as far as the academic component in your program?
But I don't want us to ding them if they don't, okay? I don't want us
Be
to.
additional points.
They get more points.
Yeah, they get them.
I don't even want to have bonus points in there. I think we should, if we wanna have an academic, now this is when I would say we just have a separate category for them. For if we want that to be a focus and we give them points for it. Because even just regular old summer stuff, and one of my answers, I think I said it builds background knowledge, and so Lee, this actually happened for me. I went into a classroom when the teacher says, we're gonna talk about seasons. So she called on a student and said, what's your favorite season? And he said lemon pepper. Not winter, spring, summer, fall, that's what she was going, but he said, he heard seasoning, like from.
Right.
And so it was funny to me when I didn't laugh at home, but I like cracked up. So, but just the going to Cade or doing something, the camps do a lot of things to keep the kids engaged and I don't want to say entertain, that's not the word, but keep them engaged. And
I consider what you just said about the game, that's academic.
It is, but the thing is, I don't want you to put in to say if you give a pre and a post test to them for a group that they're just doing, that's a field trip.
Yeah.
That is enriching the kids, but I don't want you to give them a pre and a post academic test, and if they don't make gains, and they get dinged on their evaluation. That's what I'm going with that.
Okay.
But
I can back off that one.
yeah, but if it's a group, if it's an organization, like I keep using Freedom School because that is their focus. And I mean, they do a lot of music and science and yada, 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 and the field trips that they do. I mean, they went over to Butler Beach. I had to show them that. But so that is their focus. And so they do it well, right? But I don't think we should have Girls Place don't do stuff, but they take the kids and they experience a lot of stuff that is helping them to build background knowledge. So when they read a passage, on the FAST exam, that they would have some concept of what it is, possibly because of the experience that they have.
Well, and I think kids need a break. Jeez Louise, kids need a break. There may be kids that do need so much academic support that they do want to have them in a more formally academic. But there are certainly activities, just to show, my daughter did the HIP summer spectacular years over years. I guarantee you, they had to read. If she wanted to play Wolf #1 in Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book, she darn well had to read. and learn those lines, and she had to be able to count, and she had to be, so there are all kinds of activities that still use the skills, and you can avoid the slump because you're using the skills without it being a formal academic, in which case you're right, a pre-post vocabulary or some, it ain't gonna work. What you really want to avoid is, did you get to the next grade and suddenly you were way behind where you were when you left the previous one? And so I think we just need to be very careful, not to have our academic focus make it so that the kids are miserable and don't wanna go, and then you've created a huge problem at home because mom can't get them out of bed to go to camp.
What you just said is exactly what I'm looking for in the RFP. You know, what,
Tell us
as
how
far
you-
as how are you going to encourage?
How does your,
learning?
yeah, how does your program help kids not have the summer
If you
slump?
define learning broadly, like
Yes.
employability skills.
Mhm.
Christie's kids are learning teamwork, they're learning,
Mhm.
all sorts of things that have to do with life and employability skills.
Right.
And
If they can learn without knowing you're teaching them, it's.
You're gonna really learn this. You're killing it.
Conflict resolution.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we kind of all in agreement as far as that is concerned? Did y'all get direction? Kirsten?
A quick.
Somebody in the back.
Yeah.
I'd like your opinion, we love Freedom School, right? You all know that, we love Freedom School, and we love to find a way to, expand Freedom School to at least one or two of our rural areas. If we were to bring back to you all, at the RFP development workshop, where within the application, there are 2 sites can apply to be 2 additional Freedom Schools, but then also everything else you all want to see our summer camps be. Because then the possibility of expanding to 3 total sites for Freedom School, then we still have our academic type camps that are specifically for that. And then we have our fun, exposure field type camps who still can meet the requirements that you all just mentioned as it relates to, career exploration and leadership. And how do you feel about that?
Anybody else?
I
like
think
it.
you could even say, like, what, be curious to see the percentage, you know, 60%, like in trends. And then anytime you can replicate or expand a successful model, I think that's fantastic.
The answer would be no. You're just submitting after, summer school, summer program.
Yeah.
That falls in the category, so, yeah, that's fine. I don't think anybody has a problem with it.
And then we're not forcing the pre and post, and we wanna see, gains this way on any other camp. And then folks who are just interested in having a Freedom School in the area could apply. Okay. Thank you.
Gotta hurry up, because
Dr. Hart?
Yes, right.
So I made a comment on the pre and post. I just said, do not make the camp staff do that. Just sounds horrible to me, but why not have that be on the parent questionnaire at the end about how did camp go? You might ask, if one of our hopes was to prevent summer slide, how do you think that worked out? Because I think the parents have a clue what the kids come home with that's new in terms of gaining experience or learning how to work well with others or take a leadership role from time to time.
Confidence
Parents
building.
are good at that. I love the parents' result, feedback that we sometimes get. So helpful.
Okay, did y'all get the information that y'all need? Did you have something that you'd like to report? Yeah,
Hi, good afternoon. I would just want to say thank you so much for all that you do. And in your hands lie the life of so many kids. I am a qualitative researcher, but I'm not coming representing my organization, Insightful Analysis Solution. I've been doing research for over 10 years, but I'm coming as an aunt, as an immigrant, and as someone.
You just have to one step away from the microphone because you're causing feedback.
And tell us your name.
Yeah.
Dr. Samaya. And someone who has a disability background. I did disability employment for about 12 years especially in the area of employment. Okay, so after people graduate, they're trying to get jobs. So certain skills become important to them, such as reading, okay, communication skills, and soft skills. And I'm a little nervous because I'm very passionate about this. And I also have a nephew who has a disability. And I also have family members who do not speak English. So not only do I have to have a full job, you know, but I also have to translate and advocate for them. So this is a summer programs with an academic focus do work. And I have a personal experience, but guess what? I paid out of pocket. Okay, I come from one of my family members is very highly educated, so we had the fund to support them. But that's not the story for a lot of immigrants that are moving to Gainesville with children with IEPs. I have had to go into war zones to advocate for my nephew who has a disability. And right now, I'm worried that my niece, who doesn't read the resources because she has a mother at home who cannot teach her English. So in all of this conversation, I just want you guys to think about beyond the numbers, beyond the statistics, and look into the stories that you can gather from immigrant or parents with disabilities that have a totally complete story as to how summer programs can actually help improve the academic life of their children when they don't have the pressure of having to compete and sit with other kids who actually can read more than they can, and they are timid, okay, and they cannot compete, okay, or have the help at home to help them succeed. So I beg you for you to evaluate, you know, how much funding you give these programs and how much support you can give those segments of the population.
Thank you very much. Chrissy.
Thank you for discouraging the assessments, because if I had to do 10 minutes per child, I'd have everyone walk out the door. They would just leave, and it would literally take all day long to do those assessments on the first day of camp. The other piece is the trust is working really hard to educate us as providers. And so perhaps the summer learning loss, like that's part of the training piece, like that it's part of our role responsibility to educate our kids, whether it is at 1 camp for 10 weeks, then they need to be awakened to that. So integrate into the training, and maybe Freedom School comes to show how they do it in such an engaging way. Because I think that we all have something to learn from them. But yeah, you gotta sneak in the educational stuff, because if you were just like, it's gonna be, we're reading, we're doing journal, which we do, we require it, but we will also sit down and read with our kids while they're reading. But it has to be fun and engaging. But again, an opportunity to educate camps that it's important.
I am still in the girl. I've been sitting here like, who is the other one that's like really knocking it out of the park?
My computer does not have a very long battery life, so. Maybe it.
Well, it probably would have had an excellent life if we had shut up.
Do not blame the computer.
Hey Cheryl, you good?
Yes. Well, you know what's been the best is I had all my written comments in there and you guys are saying it for me. So I'm in a lot of agreement here. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
So, the other two things I think we wanted to get feedback. Please. Strategies we'd like to see, so materials and resources, we put out some suggestions where y'all could check the boxes on what you think would be a good way to provide materials and resources. The one that was the most popular was incentive surprises for youth engagement. For example, maybe if they complete certain reading or whatever activity it is that would help them engage in learning, that they could maybe get a prize, was something that that was the most endorsed item. Books and reading materials, of course, there's things available at the library, and then, Member Certain gave the suggestion of the district giving consumables that may otherwise be thrown away. And then take home learning activities, that one was selected as well, but those are just options for material and resources that could potentially be given those means. I already talked about the assessments, and then the last one was family and partner engagement. The library, partner with the library for them to have their staff visit, or for the camps to visit the library. The library always has a summer reading program that they will do reading activities and things of that nature, so that could be a beneficial partnership that the book, I think everybody checked that box. And then host family engagement, we had 6 board members check that as well. And another suggestion was joint events where 2 or more providers can plan or host, along with other ancillary organizations like libraries. So kind of like a thing where we could bring together the folks in the community, school district, health department, to engage with families. So that was the last 2 summer learning ideas for how to do that. It seemed like everybody was pretty much in favor of the majority of those, particularly with the library and the youth incentives or prizes. Any additional comments on materials and resources or family and partner engagement?
Okay. So, the speaker that spoke, thank you for bringing up this issue about kids that don't speak English. It is becoming a much larger and larger issue, and it just kind of strikes me that that might be a place where we can really, what their thoughts are about that, because they're widely dispersed around the county in every rural, small city. And that to me might be a place where we can seek some help, because we haven't even talked about that. And it seems to be, I was gonna ask Shane, he's not here, but, is this a growing issue in kindergarten? Are we seeing this as a growing issue in our school system? And if so,
Getting more students.
pre-K and kindergarten and libraries might be a place. Every Alachua County student, there's 27,000 of them will get a library card, so they all have access. It's a program the library has done. So that's just my initial thought.
By chart.
Just to respond to what you said, because I always think of the library district as a wonderful resource like us that have their own independent funding. And do you know whether they would struggle to participate at our summer activities, to send someone over with some books or to read a story to the kids, do something that your staff wouldn't necessarily have to do, but you could accommodate your schedule?
That's part of what they do.
But do they need our help to do it? That's my question.
They struggle. What'd you say, Kim?
I've reached out to the library, and I think their own internal struggles with staffing turnover, all of those things, because that was something I was like, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if the library could use their existing curriculum and structure, I could leverage their expertise, and unfortunately it never got off the ground. Just communications went silent. But I think that would be wonderful if we had a way to facilitate that partnership. And even thinking, I'm writing down a lot of notes, but how can I incorporate that into my budget to allot for bringing the library in to do services with my kids? If that's something that we are doing and is best practice, I want to do it for our kids.
So the library has a very robust volunteer group of, I think, 150 parents.
And that would be
And-
start early, we wouldn't be starting late, right? We'd
Right,
have to
but
start
I'm
having
just thinking,
conversations
like,
with
this
them
becomes-
now.
Yeah.
This will have to become, this will have to become like a thing, where the library and the trust are seeking volunteers
Yeah.
to basically have conversational English with young kids at libraries during certain times and bringing them and teaching them English. It's conversational English.
Well, I don't think she's talking about that.
She's talking about
just
the
talking about.
100%.
Or
her stuff.
any,
Right.
I mean, transportation, because Kids Count used Alachua County Public School buses and paid for transportation for the summer, so I mean, that would be a barrier to get our kids, or not even a barrier, just an extra consideration, logistically speaking. However, if a partnership is established, I mean, I had a second grader last year that was not flagged as ESOL. She spoke no English. Her teacher just thought she was quiet.
Wow.
After I was able to connect with the liaisons at the district and said, hey, she doesn't want to be there. What's going on? That's when we found out. That classroom was filled with low learners that all struggled with English. So this one student that literally did not know the language, she didn't stick out. And to that point, her mom only spoke Spanish as well. So Kids Count, we're fortunate we were able to advocate in that space. But I also want to bring up that it's an old statistic, but over 20% of Alachua County adults are functionally illiterate. A large chunk of those folks are the parents of my children. So keeping some of that in mind as well. But I think it's a phenomenal idea to leverage the resources we have in our community to support our children and our parents, because family engagement is critical. Something I encountered this summer was I wanted all of my parents, if they were able to come on field trips with us. See that water safety is hugely important. We went to the pool 2 times a week. Come and make fun memories with your child. Don't have the time and means to take their kids on things like fun field trips to skate station, which I don't recommend. I got my first ever concussion at skate station. But our parents were like, thank you so much. We could have never afforded this. We could have never done this with my child because these are large families. So that means they're paying for all of their kids to go and themselves. So these opportunities for family engagement can be multifaceted, both academic and from that enrichment perspective of we're building vocabulary, but we're also building relationships between providers, between the school district, between the trust, which has the best outcome for our kid.
Thank you.
So, you know, a couple of things. One, just a personal note of that. I didn't learn English until I was 6. And my first month or 2 or 3 or 6 of first grade were devastating. Because I have never in my life felt so isolated. So yes, we need to support these efforts, and I still cry about it, which shows you how intense an experience it was. Second, and totally separate, we give away backpacks full of school supplies in August. Do we give a bag of summer supplies to when we send you off? So it seems to me if we're gonna do a summer camp fair, one of the things that we might do, and we create some nice tote bags with our logo and that little sun thing that we did last year.
And some of those consumables.
Some of those consumables, books, that, you know, a range of books, some for very young readers, some middle readers. Just things that could be the same thing as we send them off with for the beginning of the school year, for the beginning of the summer year, how to have fun. Safety stuff for their parents, we could put all kinds of information. But I think it just occurred to me that we do, every organization I know does a backpack thing. But we don't do a summer pack thing.
You know, Maggie, maybe also this, the UF, the New Worlds Reading Order is kind of like the Dolly Parton, maybe that may be a good initiative, as well as checking with the school district, because I think we use Title I money in the summer to give out some stuff.
Families have to qualify
For New World based on their reading scores.
Yeah.
But the folks we talking about, 70% of this.
Qualified.
But their family engagement materials are all open source and research based, and you can print material books.
That have the Spanish on one page and English on the other. And guess what, how many parents learn?
Yeah.
Wow, that's good.
So, I feel like there's another parking lot issue emerging, which would be, and I know, Marcia, you're working really hard on this literacy program and that's in development, but I just feel like we need to make really good friends with the library board and the library, and so do we, and is there some way we could funnel or subsidizing to make that happen?
Got a board member right there.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'm 100% with 3 county commissioners, 2 city commissioners, and library.
So maybe we need a joint meeting like we had with.
Yeah, I think it's
Make that
time.
Okay.
With one topic, just one topic.
Mhm, just one topic.
Two, I
Literacy
think we have
and-
two.
and-
The,
and,
Well, the bilingual
language.
and
the
the
summer.
summer slide.
Allison,
Literacy is my jam.
you wanna pull up a chair?
Well, I just gotta keep.
No, Allison, look like you're here.
So it's a meeting I'm having tomorrow with Dr. Contest at the University of Florida for UFly, the literacy curriculum about implementing it with fidelity in out-of-school time spaces. And so I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the majority, if not all schools are using UFly. They're supposed to be. So even to put that out into this room as we discuss literacy in out-of-school time, it is something that Kids Count has been very fortunate to partner in implementing UFly in our after-school programs, but that's something I'm also working on, is figuring out how can we take some of the games that they've developed that are evidence-based, that are fun literacy, reinforce skills that our students are learning during the school year. But that's something that I would love to bring to the room, to the group, to all of the providers of if we can use an evidence, in essence, double doses of a working like literacy intervention. It's something I hope to do, but as we have these conversations about partnerships and supporting our youth and our community and not reinventing the wheel, just wanted to put that out there.
And Allison, just let you know that the university's doing the analysis.
Comprehensive
The-
needs assessment.
Right, and in our later meeting today, we're gonna extend when it's supposed to come back to us to February. And I think, and then at that point, it comes back to us, I think it's in March,
I hope,
somewhere in
I
there, so.
hope February, March,
Mhm.
we'll have a report from the needs assessment, and then we will begin our planning. Just so you know, it may have been before you started, no, with Kids Count. There was a whole discussion about using UFly, and it did not fly.
It was
For
right when I
after school
started, yep.
specifically.
Yep.
So you won't hear, staff, say a bad word about that. I think we will revisit, at some point, but, certainly I am excited to hear what you all are doing. Excited, and happy to know that it is working. And I would love for you to continue to give us updates on how it's going.
I completely forgot that Children's Trust, I met with them and shared a lot of my concerns, with literacy in Alachua County, and yeah, that completely slipped my mind, so it's so exciting times, but I won't use that word again. I had just started when we used that word in this space. But wonderful work, and thank you all sincerely for this, because these are long and heavy conversations that take a lot of mental capacity, and as a provider in this community that cares deeply for it, I'm just endlessly grateful. I could cry too, thinking about it.
Thank you for coming.
Just want to share, our experience with the library was very positive over the summer. And so I think it's connecting with the right librarians as well. Because Tower Road was eager to have us come back, whereas, and our kids were so chill and so well behaved. I'm like, why are you so overwhelmed? Like, there are 5 adults in the room for 20 children. And so I think it's having those conversations about who's more equipped for it. Because I think some libraries are equipped for 5 to 10 kids coming in. Others are great at having 70 come in. So I think it's just sharing those resources and sharing the contact information early, because they agree that they'd be willing to plan curriculum for us if we talk to them in January and February.
Can I say one more thing about bilingual? So traditionally bilingualism or emerging bilingualism has been seen as a deficit issue in education. And as somebody who's actually done a little research on the topic, both personally and professionally, unless you approach it as and enhancing experience to be bilingual. And there's lots of research, divergent thinking, all kinds of cognitive abilities improve with bilingualism. So we need to make sure that whatever we decide teaches kids that what they have is a gift, not a deficit.
You know, a lot of people don't know this, that there's this dual language immersion program at the New Terwilliger that gets like no airplay, it seems like.
I
But
read
it's
about it.
hugely popular.
Well, and I was
Parents who
really
apply-
excited
right.
about the structure of it, actually.
Right,
because
but
it's doing it right.
But they don't talk about it a lot, so really like the students who, it's a long ways for your student to take the bus out there, but if they apply, they could go and that would be a way for them to be.
And let me tell you, immersion is definitely the way to go. And you can start talking about things in both languages and you pick it up. But it's gotta be seen as a gift, not a deficit.
Bonnie?
So, Mary had it.
I'm sorry.
Well, so Bonnie can go, I had a concluding comment.
You mean like, you want me
My
to go?
concluding comment was regarding the performance measures, and obviously we'll come back and with new performance measures based on the feedback and the input we've received today, but I think the enthusiasm about the library kind of warrants maybe a performance measure relating to that, and I think that would speak volumes of, being able to connect the children with that resource, whether it be through a library card, a visit, or exposure to a librarian and learning about that. So I just wanted to kind of conclude with the performance measures and state that I will calibrate them based on the type of program that we're going to have for the summer 2025.
Okay, any questions?
Mary Ann.
So I have a concluding comment, open the door. The concluding comment is I heard a lot today about meta programming from Dr. Hart and sort of capacity building and connecting to other agencies that I think is encouraging. And I think we should open the door and think about, what is the need of the library system? Do we need to train? Do we need to, get a core of volunteers and train them? Is it a youth summer learning opportunity? I don't know, but I think the idea of, and then on the personal level, I sit here today because of summer camp programs. 2 generations ago in my family, my grandmother was a immigrant with a 3rd grade education, working 3 jobs. And my mother was in tenement life in New York. And because my grandmother made connections to the Fresh Air Fund and the YMCA, my mother got to go have those experiences. And when I came along as the youngest of 6, also born to a mother who was 40, my dad died when I was 8. And we moved out to this old dirt road in Lake Florida. At the end of the dirt road was the summer camp. And it became everything about my leadership. It's important. That's why I got emotional about the not getting so mired on the academic that we forget all of the other things kids are learning from the camp.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Any other questions? Did y'all get everything that you need?
So, yeah, I was gonna ask that if there's any questions that they wanna clear up before they bring back a recommendation, then I was gonna make a
We
recommendation.
want to have no more workshops.
A lot of workshops. They ask for it. They keep scheduling them, they're asking for it.
Good, all right, well, there's snacks over there, in between meetings, but actually, I'm gonna be here for next meeting.
What time is Clemson board?
They're
6?
going over ballots, they're going through ballots already.
Right, so, you're just gonna miss that?
You have to have 2 out of 3, and so I may, this ain't miss it, and I don't think I'll miss it.
I've been missing, well, that's an important thing.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, it is.
It is. So with that, we are adjourned with this one, and we will see you.
Seventeen.
If you know.
What an exponent you are, though. There you go.